Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Embracing the Journey. I am your host, Norris Frederick, and I am here with somebody super special. Her name is Annabel Quintero. She's a published author with a book called Step, Step, Jump. Not to mention, fortunately, she suffered a big, huge, life-changing tragedy on 9/11. But it didn't stop her there. So I want to introduce you guys, Annabel. How are we?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Norris.
Of course. I had to take a deep breath to get through the whole intro. So let's jump into it. Tell me about who you were before 9/11. Tell me what life was like before then.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, born and raised in Seattle. Growing up, I'd always hear stories of New York. My parents met in Brooklyn. My brother and sister were born in Brooklyn as well. And I was the only one born in Seattle. Education was always something that my family prioritized. And so after college, I really wanted to pursue my childhood dreams of modeling. And I was also B-girling at the time in Seattle with DVS crew. And
For those who may not know what a B-girl is, can you explain it to us?
sure, B-girl, B-boy is someone who break dances. And so, yeah, I was like dancing in Seattle, breakdancing out here in the hip hop scene. And I just really wanted to experience life in the Big Apple. So after college, I got a great job and saved up my money and drove 3,000 miles to experience the Big Apple. And that was just amazing to be there.
Okay, so I love New York, okay? And I love how diverse it is with all the food, the people, the jobs, just everything. What was it like coming from Seattle? That's a semi-big city to going to this monumental place in the United States. What was that like?
Wow, the energy in the city is just I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, it's like this whole city was alive. And I think for me, it was very liberating because here in Seattle, you're in your car and there's not much interaction with people. And there's people walking by,
Right.
You're walking by. And so there's this liberated, even your body, your body is leading and your energy is also like becomes so much more stronger because you're interacting with so many people and you have a split second to, are you going to make eye contact? Are you not? And people there are much more interactive and they engage more. And so I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
What was your first career there? Or were you still doing the B-girl thing?
Advertising. When I was I arrived there August of 99 or July of 99. And my brother had already been living there. He got his master's in business at Columbia and was already working on Wall Street. And so I was like, okay, let me just get a job to establish myself, to get my first apartment. So I worked in advertising in the production company, department, just anything I could do to just make ends meet, save up money and get my apartment. And so that was really where I started, and then went to Deutsche Bank in the marketing department as well. And then finally landed at a job at this boutique hedge fund called Telligent.
If you don't mind me asking, and my mom told me never ask a woman her age, how old were you then?
I was in my early 20s. So I was about 22, 23.
So you packed up and moved across the country at 22 or 23 years old to this like huge city and went out there to establish who you are, right?
Yeah.
Was that not scary?
Oh, it was. I remember it was so scary. I had a lot of, growing up, it was difficult to share my dreams.
Tell me about that. What do you mean?
Well, I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. And so to model was very vain. And so it wasn't glorifying God. And so there was always this conflict within me of being a spiritual person and doing what's right in God's eyes. And also that juxtaposed with, I want to do something for me and exalt my energy in front of a camera. Like those were two very different things. And so I was always had this internal battle of which one would win. And it finally got to a point where I was in college and was in my senior year. And I had all these electives because I had taken all the hard classes. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do dance because I love dancing.
Right.
And when I was little, I always wanted to be a dancer. But because it didn't bring in the money or it wasn't safe, I didn't pursue it. And so here I was taking dance as a senior. And I remember stopping, looking at a studio and imagining myself on that floor. And the music was going and I could see myself. You know how sometimes you're staring at something and but you're really looking at the picture inside your mind?
Right.
And then so I'm looking at this dance floor, Meany Hall at the University of Washington. And
wait. You're a dog?
Yes.
Me too. Yeah, I knew I liked you. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah.
Meany Hall.
Yeah. So, and then this student dancer comes and then she starts dancing. And when you're fixed on this one space, and then something comes in your view, it's like, oh, it kind of interrupts what you were thinking and imagining.
Right.
And there she was dancing, a student. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, I did not choose dance, even though I love to dance. And it made it's almost like the first time I tasted regret. I was like, wow, she chose it. I didn't have the courage to choose my first love, right? Which was dance. And I was a senior. I was about to graduate. And I was like, I can't redo these 4 years again.
Right.
They're done. And I need to live my life. And that moment was really where I realized, man, you can have that job. You can finish college in 4 years. You can be a board member and do all these things to be like this perfect person. Or for me, it was always being the perfect daughter. And it didn't make me happy.
Man.
It didn't make me happy. And then I realized, wow, I'm doing all these things to make my parents proud or like make the family look good or just always having the checklist, but I wasn't doing what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to model. I wanted to dance. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I may not have been trained, but I'm B-girling now. You know, I'm dancing at the art bar. And
I love it.
And then I was like, okay, so I realized at that point that I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't happy. And then I was like, okay, I need to make myself happy. I need to go for it because I had this office. I was about to qualify to buy a house. I mean, I was doing all these things, right? And I was like, this isn't it. This isn't life. I did not arrive. Even though I did all these things that people said I should do, I did not arrive. And I was like, I want to experience life. So that's why I moved.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Soft, chewy, sour. The gummy experience that you've been searching for. New from Sour Punch.
Welcome back to Embracing the Journey podcast. So you went to New York because you wanted to do this for you. You wanted to rediscover you. You wanted to live out your dream.
Growing up, things were, rough financially. And so even though I was modeling and was B-girling, I still didn't want to be a starving artist because I was like, I already know how it is to starve. I'm not trying to starve again.
Right.
So that's why and my brother was already an investment banker. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go into banking. I want to learn how how to trade. I want to learn about money. I applied for this role to work at a small boutique hedge fund, and it was a father-son organization.
So you were living in New York. Where was life for you during 9/11? Like, where were you in comparison to everybody else in the country and then also in New York?
Well, I remember, Monday nights are the best nights in Manhattan, and I had an amazing time. So my alarm kept going off, and I was hitting the snooze button. And finally, I was woken up by all these crows. And so I looked out my bedroom window, and I had this tree there, and it was filled with crows. And they were cawing and everything. And then even as I was looking at them, I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, I got to go to work.
Right.
So I just changed real quick. And I was only a block away from the one train, ran up those steps really quick and headed down to the office because I knew I had enough time to get there before my bosses and still open up the whole office before the stock market bell.
Right.
Yeah. So I got there.
What time was that?
I don't know. I was cutting it close. It must have been like a little bit after 9,
Okay.
like 9. Yeah. Cause I remember I didn't have that much time. And I walked in and I saw my boss's sweater on the chair. I was like, oh no, he's already here. He must be in the restroom or something. And so I was like turning on the computers, printing out the portfolios. And finally I got settled in my chair and was like reading what was happening in Hong Kong and everywhere else around the world. And as I'm reading the paper of the Financial Times, and all of a sudden, like I feel something just hit my building, and I like sway from left to right like that in my chair, in my cubicle. I hit both sides, and I'm like,
Wow.
what was that? So I go to the window and I look outside, and it's a clear, sunny day. I mean, blue skies, the sun is shining, and the buildings are fine. And I realized, well, wait a minute. The buildings are shorter than the one I'm in. And then I feel this earthquake. And so I run to my desk. I grab my purse and my sweater. I get to the door of the office because
Were you planning on going home?
no, I just was like freaked out, and I was like, well, let me just see, right? But and I was like, because what was that? And there's an earthquake, and then I'm there in the doorway and met with this other man who comes out of his office, and we're like staring at each other, and I see all his fright through his eyes, and then the earthquake starts again. And he runs into his office, and then I just, with all my might, hold that door open. And I was like, from slamming in on me, and I was like, ay, Dios mío, ¿qué hago? Like, dear God, what do I do? And I look into the office, and all the sunshine's gone. It's like gray. It's like this muted gray. And mind you, there was no alarm, no announcement, nothing. And I was like, well, it's an earthquake, so I should probably take cover under the desk. But there were boxes, there was no room. And then I looked up again, and it was still gray. And I was like, oh.
And it happened like that.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, Annabelle, you asked the question, and that's your answer. Like, you can't be here. And I was like, but I'm supposed to stay, right? And I was like, just get to the ground. Even if you have to die trying. Because I was also so afraid with the earthquake. I mean, the whole building was trembling. Like I said, that door was slamming, it was a metal door. And so.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Were people yelling and screaming, or was it just completely silent?
Completely silent. I was by myself. like I said, the only person I saw was that older, Asian man, and he went back into his office, and I was left there by myself with just me and and asking God that question, and all I got was a change in the environment. And with that change in the environment, I knew that was my answer. It was cold, and the fear began to set in. And that's why I think in my mind, I had to almost talk myself into going. And I had to face death in my mind first, just so I could overcome the fear of actually trying to move my body in that building. Because when I did, that hallway was like this.
You could see it.
It was, I can see it. I know it was more of a feeling. I don't even know if I can like see it, but I was being thrown around. Like my feet couldn't catch the floor sometimes, or because it was lopsided like this, I could barely catch the wall, of the hallway. And every step I took was a Herculean effort. Almost imagine like being a rag doll thrown around a fun house. Like that's how it was. And then I finally turned the corner, get to the stairwell, and I'm like touching the doorknob, and I'm like, I can't tell if it's hot or cold. And I remember you're not supposed to open a door if it's hot. And I was like, oh, great. And then I was like, well, maybe I should go somewhere else. I'm like, I don't even know where another stairwell is. Right? I mean, this is it. This is the one. And I literally was like, okay, Annabelle, stop and breathe. And I had to like put my hand, I kept it on the doorknob. And I was like, okay, just listen to your brain synapses and like tell if it's hot or cold. And finally I could tell it was cold. And so I opened the door.
Because you're more concerned right now for fire, right? Is that what happens when the door's hot?
Yeah. And I just didn't want to just open it quickly, but I was so afraid, like when you're just the building's shaking. So I'm like, I'm trying to get out of here. Right. Yeah. And then, but I'm like, but I don't want to open the door if there's like fire on the other side. I don't know what's on the other side of the door. And so, yeah, that took a lot of me to just calm down for a moment, just to have bodily sensations, because when you're so scared, you can't really tell what's really happening. I opened that door though, and no one was there. Everything was fine.
Still no alarms.
No nothing. Alarm. But then this invisible stench hits me, and it starts singeing my nose hairs, and then I'm like, I can barely breathe.
And this is in the staircase?
This is right in the staircase, right when I opened the door. And then, thank goodness I had my cardigan with me, and so I have it over my face, and I'm breathing, and I'm like, great, something's burning. There's a fire. Now, I had been in fires before growing up. Like my apartment building, that complex had a lot of fires in the 80s. And so I knew the smell of fire. I know how something smells like when it's burning. It was not wood. I was like, I don't know what's burning, but this is not wood. And so I was like, okay, something hit the building. There's an earthquake, and now there's a fire. And there's no announcement. There's no fire alarm. Nothing. I'm on the 46th floor. And
in work nationwide typically starts at 8 or 9 a.m. So there's other people in this building, but yet no alarm, no nothing.
No, nothing.
Next week on the Embracing the Journey podcast.
He was like, okay, a plane hit. We're like, what? A plane? I step with my right, and then my whole body would leap to that landing, and then I just did it again. So I was only taking 2 steps.
Of 16.
I end up step jumping down 46 flights of the World Trade Center on September 11th. It almost takes death to actually realize how alive we really are.
Wow.
I just kept praying that please keep the walls up. I mean, I would look up and say, please God, just keep the building up long enough for us to get out. That was my prayer.
Do you feel guilty for still being alive right now?